Good afternoon or good evening, whatever time of the day you are seeing this. Thank you for being here. Today we are going to be doing some English literature, and I am well aware that English literature sometimes is not a favorite for everyone, and that's okay. Today we are going to be looking at poetry. And those of you from third to fifth form will know that the list of poems you are introduced to at third form, or in third form, sorry, continue all the way up to fifth. One of the ones we will begin with today is My Parents, which to me is one of the simpler poems. That's why I'm starting there, by Stephen Spender. Before we even begin to read, how do you study poetry? How do you study poetry? Now, sometimes children get a little confused because poetry may not be as straightforward as a story. And sometimes you have to try to figure out what is this person even talking about? What are they trying to say? But remember that all poetry tells a story. So sometimes you will have to read it more than once to break it down. Please follow along as we do My Parents. Okay, so I will read it, listen, follow, and let's go. My parents kept me from children who were rough, who threw words like stones and wore torn clothes. Their thighs showed through rags. They ran in the streets and climbed cliffs and stripped by the country streams. I feared more than tigers, their muscles like iron, their jerking hands and their knees tight on my arms. I feared the salt, coarse pointing of those boys who copied my lisp behind me on the road. They were lithe. They sprang out behind hedges like dogs to bark at my world. They threw mud while I looked the other way, pretending to smile. I longed to forgive them, but they never smiled. Let's break it down. This poem is told from the point of view of a child. The persona is that of a child. So we have a boy, a little boy who's speaking. And let's look at the first verse. My parents kept me from children who were rough. So that tells us that that little boy, or at least his parents, did not see him as rough. Maybe he was a little softer, maybe a little gentler, maybe there was something different about him. And as he's looking at speaking about these children, he said that their thighs were showing through their clothes. So that kind of tells us these children may have been poor because their clothes were rags. The other thing that we see is these children seem to be bigger than him. Look at verse 2. It says, I feared their muscles like iron. So now it makes us feel like this is a little skinny boy, right? So not only does he seem to be a little richer than them, but now these children are bigger than him and he seems to be a little thing to the point that he is afraid of their bodies, right? And then it says, I feared the salt, coarse pointing of those boys who copied my lisp. Now, a lisp refers to when a person has a speech impediment. They're not able to speak properly. Think about how mean children can be when somebody cannot speak well. Okay, so the children are pointing and laughing at him. In the third verse, it says that they would spring out behind hedges so that they're jumping on him, like they're trying to scare him, right? And it ends with, I longed to forgive them, but they never smiled. So that tells us he just wanted to fit in. He wanted to be a part of their group, but he was different. Let's listen to the ways he was different. The children seemed to be poor, and he was not. The children seemed to be bigger, stronger, and he was not. He had a problem with his speech, and they did not. They would laugh at him. They did not want him to be a part of their group. And all he wanted to do was to fit in with their group. So that's what that poem is about. We will pause here to do our questions, and let's get busy.